Hi everyone, this is Jon Bernys talking to you all. I am here in a forest somewhere on Earth. You can guess where. So I'm just here to announce my newest podcast featuring my gallon of water with a very legendary, very memorable American poet, CAConrad. We discuss some incredibly introspective and hopefully consequently inspiring topics about poetry, about the psychoanalytical powers it has, about the spiritual powers it has, about the healing powers it has. And he is, as I've said in the beginning and the end of the podcast, CAConrad is one very busy human. So I did not get to all of the questions and all the topics I wanted to get to, but we still had a very, very meaningful conversation. And I extend my deepest gratitude for him for even performing his poetry on my podcast, which has never been done before in my series. So I'm just here to preface it and also warning that we did go over some very serious, potentially sensitive topics that might be a little upsetting to certain viewers. But I don't believe in censorship, so I will not censor anything. So I will just preface with a warning. And yeah, I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. We both did. And since this podcast I consider unfinished, hopefully we will talk again. And I encourage everyone to go outside on this beautiful, cloudless day. I think we should write down the date of every cloudless day in our lives. I think I'm going to do that from now on. I believe in a seed effect. So thank you very much and have a beautiful day.
Great.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in to this very, very special edition. Hello, to this very special edition of our neweveningisle.com conversation series, in which we talk to very original, very beautiful thinkers and get them to express their ideas in a very accessible manner. We have a very special, very busy person that thankfully is here with us. We have the one and only CAConrad, who is one of the most recognizable poets working today, especially in the United States. A deeply original voice whose work merges ritual, lived experience, and radical presence into poetry. A recipient of multiple fellowships and awards, including a Guggenheim Fellowship. Conrad has produced numerous influential collections that not only showcases how beautiful poetry is, but also how beautiful poetry can be, um, with with a large consensus of this work right here that I have myself, the Book of Frank, largely considered his magnum opus. Um, their work is often created through what they call somatic poetry rituals, practices designed to heighten awareness and transform everyday perceptions into art. They have collaborated with artists and thinkers across disciplines and have been a vital presence in contemporary poetry through a variety of expressions such as performances, teaching, and community engagement. Conrad's readings and talks regularly draw devoted audiences, especially among youth, a rarity among poetry circles, and their work circulates widely among those interested in experimental and transformative approaches to poetry. So I highly recommend for anyone that is interested in avant-garde poetry, poetry that is alive, embodied, spiritually charged. Their work I find is truly awe-inspiring, as it does not simply describe experience of everyday life, but it actively alters it and actively emerges the audience with it, inviting readers into a heightened state of attention and connection. And for all the information on this, please visit his website at www.caconrad.com. So, CAConrad is a very, very busy person living an international lifestyle, frequently giving talks and readings around the North and Southeastern United States and Europe. So, it has been several months in the making of us corresponding through emailing and calling and texting. And finally, we have accommodated each other's schedules to do this podcast.
I'm
um,
so glad.
which is conveniently right after the day after World Poetry Day. World Poetry Day was yesterday. I didn't know
Yeah.
that, so it's absolutely fitting. So we have finally found time to talk. So CAConrad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, John.
You're welcome. So, I guess where to start would be, so if this is going to be all about introspection and inspiration and, and one of my,
Do you mind if I start with something else, though?
absolutely, go ahead.
So before we began, you and I were talking, and you talked about doing music and then writing poetry, and that you were talking about the feedback that you got from it, encouraging you to do more. Remember you said that?
Yes.
And I just want to say that it's really important that you do the thing you love. It doesn't matter about feedback. It doesn't matter what other people think or want. I write poetry because it's what I want to do. I've been writing poetry for over 50 years. I started writing in 1975. I mean, it's everything to me. And after 30 years of writing, I changed everything to start using these somatic poetry rituals, which is a big deal. You know, if you're doing something for 3 decades and then you realize you need to change the whole thing, you have to have, I'm going to use the word courage. You have to have the courage to just break it and start over. Because it's a big deal after 30 years of doing something to say, I'm going to do it completely different from now on. But now, for the past 20 years, I've been working with the somatic poetry rituals.
Hmm.
But it's got to be what you absolutely love and want.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
doesn't matter what anybody else wants.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Audience feedback is, I don't care about the audience.
Hmm. So, um,
I
I
know
was,
that sounds really rude that I said that, but let me just clarify that. So when I was a younger poet, my poems were had too many words. They were very overwritten because I wanted to make sure everybody understood exactly what I meant. But that's not possible. Every human being is completely separate. Our experiences make us completely unique. So everybody's experiences makes their lens they look at the world through unique. So 1,000 people reading one of my poems makes 1,000 new poems, meaning I can ignore the audience because they're never going to get what I want. They're only going to get what they can only read it through the lens of their experience, you know? So there's no explaining anything. That's what I love about poetry. Poetry is co-creative. There's a lot of space on the page for the writer, for the reader's imagination. When you're reading a poem, you're co-creating with the poet.
mhm. Yeah, you're
And I
interacting,
just want to make that clear, yeah.
and so you're interacting with what you already know, and then manipulating that into something new.
Well, you can only use what you know. You don't have a choice. Your experiences are you. You don't have any option. You know what I mean? So when you come to read a poem of mine, you're reading it through your experiences. So it was great. When I understood that as a young poet, I could stop overwriting because nobody was going to get what I meant anyway. It was impossible because my experiences were my experiences, and the reader's experiences are what are driving their way of reading the poem. So I could ignore the audience the rest of my life because I trust them. It's not rude. I'm not ignoring the audience out of rudeness. I'm ignoring them out of trust. I trust the audience to get what they want when they want. And it frees me up to not fucking worry about them. I don't have to ever, 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 ever think about that audience. And by the way, there's always going to be people who hate what you do and like what you do and or don't care.
Mhm. I get it. It's more you're ignoring the dependence of it, the dependence aspect. Depending your happiness upon whether they like your work or not, depending your I'm
I'm
Mhm.
ignoring I'm no longer trying to explain to them what the poem means
Mhm.
because I realize I can't. You know what I mean? Therefore, I get to ignore them and just write what I want to write. In other words, when I was younger, I used to write overwrite the poems to make sure the audience understood me. But then I realized that's not going to happen. It's not possible, because your experiences are your experiences, not mine.
Mhm.
And when you read my poems, they're new. They're out of my hands. Once I realized that, it just freed me up and liberated me. I could ignore the audience because I trust them to get what they want, when they want, how they get it, if they even want it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I have to remind you again. Is it possible you look like I still can't see your entire face? Is it possible you could like scoot back just a little bit?
See, I really can't adjust. As I said before we started, it's up on this thing, and yeah,
All right.
sorry.
No, it's okay. All right. So where I want to start is early life and introspection and how that draws into poetry because I feel it's so subjective, but at the same time that doesn't make it wrong too. So it's such a vast universe of possibilities as to what could get someone started on it. And I'd like to start with this parallel that I drew. So I read all about your childhood, growing up in the factory towns and all the, unfortunately all the traumatic experiences that can come with that. And I I can't help but I've made that connection that a lot of especially great American poets, did come from that sort of antithetical background of, a non-literary and non-academic background. One that particularly comes to mind is a favorite of mine, James Wright, who I think is still one of the best poets this country has ever produced. So I just want to get to your theories on that as to because unfortunately in such a from my takeaway such a wildly from my experience too such a wildly uncreative country, where it's so frowned upon to deviate from the path you're born in. Is there a sort of greater connotation of these really talented poets growing up in environments that did not really accommodate their passions at all and going out and becoming amazing at it?
Do you mind repeating the question? I don't quite understand the question. Can you just say the question again? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Do you believe it's like I mean, it's very broad. Do you believe it's a factor of the environment or a factor of the person? Or if there's a third option, I'm not saying about how people that, um, really talented poets growing up in environments that really do not accommodate, really have no external foretelling that they're going to be great poets growing up in non-academic circles, non-privileged, non-literary circles. Um, do you see like a
I
great?
see what you're saying.
Yes.
No, what I believe is that everybody is creative. It has nothing to do about where look, if you're encouraged to do your art, you're going to do your art. If you're discouraged from doing your art, you might not do your art, or you might do it in defiance. That is completely separate from the conversation that every single person is creative.
Hmm.
Everybody's creative. For me, it was very fortunate in many ways. Well, first of all, let me just say this. My mother was in trouble with the law and she couldn't get work. So she put me to work in the 1970s. I was selling bouquets of carnations and, roses and other flowers along the highway in these buckets. It's very isolating. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'd be out there. So, and this is the 1970s. There are no electronic gadgets. There's no cell phones. You know what I mean? So I became a reader,
Hmm.
and that's how I discovered poetry. It's all chance, everything just sort of connects. I also think that I don't know, I really feel like I wanted to be a poet in this lifetime. I think that it goes, but I will say that I wouldn't want to repeat any of that, but it definitely made me a poet.
Yeah.
And then years later, when I was in, I left the country for Philadelphia in 1984 to be a poet because I did not want to work in the factories.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I did that, and it was working. I was doing great. You know what I mean? But also, more than half of everybody I knew died of AIDS at this point. This is the mid '80s into the early '90s. It's just unless you were there, I don't know how to explain it. It was a lot of worry for young people to be doing. I mean, it was a war basically, and you saw many, many people die. You went to many funerals. I don't want to get into all that, but
Yeah.
it was a lot, and um, and there was a lot of work to do because we're all in our like late teens, early 20s, and people are dying. All these people in their 20s that can't get to the grocery store, they can't get to the doctor, they're so sick. So you're busy every morning before when you get up, like helping friends, getting grocery, like your whole life is just this like helping people get food and clothing and uh all kinds of things, get medicine. And the reason there was so much to do, the reason there was so much to do is because 98% of all the heterosexuals left. They they just packed up and left for the suburbs.
Yeah.
They wanted us at their parties until everybody got sick. They wanted us to entertain everybody. But as soon as people started getting sick, they were gone. And they didn't want to speak to you anymore. They were just it's like you didn't exist. So there was just a lot to do. I bring all that up because those years were they were traumatic. You were fighting with doctors to treat your friends like human beings. There was a lot to do. There was a lot to do. However, so then all that happens, and then I have a boyfriend, Earth, who's one of the organizers of ACT UP, and he's raped and murdered. I have a whole somatic poetry about getting over the depression because it was just awful. But let me just say this. In 2005, so from 1975 to 2005, I'm writing my poems the old-fashioned way. I'm inspired and I write, right?
Hmm.
But in 2005, I start making friends with these other poets who are in a creative writing MFA program. And they're connected in a way that I'm not. Like their writing lives and the lives I couldn't figure it out for a little while. Then I realized, oh, it's our backgrounds. Their parents, the people who raised them, were doctors, lawyers, engineers. I was raised by factory workers. Well, and a mother who didn't want to go to the factory, so she was stealing all the time. But that's another story. My point is, when you're raised by people who work in the factory, you learn some tools. For instance, when you go to work in a factory, you become an extension of a machine for 10 to 12 hours. Nobody's working 8 hours anymore. And in order to survive that job, you have to shut the present off. And your mind lives in the past and the future all day long. Or you're at that stupid machine, you know. I've got family making dental floss, cardboard boxes, light bulbs, you name it, you know what I mean? Ketchup packets for McDonald's, shit like that. And the thing is, they become an extension of that machine, and then they shut the present off. When they go home, they can't flip the switch back. So as a child, I learned to avoid the present. I knew in 2005 I needed a new relationship with time. So that's where these rituals come from, to anchor myself in the present, to create what I call an extreme present. So that when I'm doing a ritual, I can't think of anything else I'm doing. And originally that was the goal, right? To be present, anchored in the present. Eventually I did for other things like depression from my boyfriend's rape and murder, things like that. They burned him alive, they covered him in gas. It's just there's just all these things that you need to like if you're going to thrive and be happy on this planet, there's a lot to deal with,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And as well, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing all that with me. I wasn't really even sure, if if it was okay to even think about questions inviting some of those topics. So I appreciate you for being open-minded enough to share with me. And it's and yeah, a couple things to add to that. Well, first off, I'm really thankful that you said the word courage earlier in this podcast, because that's something I think poetry, part of the appeal of it is it's one of the forms of art where courage is the most, required to execute. And I really learned that from, I know, I really have to separate the art from the artist. I don't really admire him as a person, but something he said that I highly agree with was Robert Frost, where he talks about, to start your poetry career, um, does take a lot of courage, because you know you can either focus on starting as early as possible and being authentic, but then you can also take the path of the academic route and learning all the grades and not writing your first poem until you're 50, but you're already 50 by then, and who knows how played out other people have made poetry by then. So I really, that's one of the best pieces of poetry advice ever, is to get started you have to not be afraid to start on insufficient knowledge. You have to not be afraid of confronting your own ignorance on the medium itself. So
Well, I mean, I started writing immediately. In 1975, I went to the library and got a book of Emily Dickinson. I didn't want to get Emily Dickinson's poetry. It was on display where you check out the books, and the librarian pointed it out. I was polite about it and took it with. And as soon as I started reading that book, I got into it. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
not about permission. It's not about asking for permission. It's not about looking for institutions like universities to give you permission. Who cares? Poets have been writing for thousands of years without anybody's permission. You know what I mean?
And who knows how much longer, when you talk about orally, how long have they been speaking poetry? Because yeah, and who knows how long that's been going on for? Because almost
That's
universal.
right.
It's pretty much universally agreed upon that poetry's been performed much longer than it's been written down.
That's
So
right.
yeah, and
That's right.
something and I want to do what Mark Twain calls eating the frog first thing in the morning. So I want to get the heaviest topic over with first, and I'll bring this up because I had a very similar circumstance to this, that hopefully we could have some sort of shared conclusion. So I remember you reading upon, sorry, you discussing about your time being bullied, and you said this really heartbreaking sentence, that people called me faggot more than my actual name, and
Yeah.
especially since I've um something that a lot of poet friends of mine, they all kind of come to the same conclusion, that people who are ostracized, people who are thwarted, people who are, reprimanded without probable cause, a specific quirk of them, a specific thing that makes them different. But it's also the thing that can it also, and it usually is so, the thing that uniquely positively separates them from everyone else in the best of ways. And I'm just gonna say this real quick, because I like to perform this for people all the time. It's very, very short. It's only two stanzas. It's this poem called The Two-Headed Calf by Laura Gilpin. So it goes, tomorrow, when the farm boys find this freak of nature, they will wrap his body in newspaper and carry him to the museum. But tonight he is alive and in the north field with his mother. It is a perfect summer evening, the moon rising over the orchard, the wind in the grass. And as he stares into the night sky, there are twice as many stars as usual. So I that's that poem really showed me more
That's
than anything,
beautiful.
just how beyond fucked up it is to to punish people for things, not just punishing people for things that are not in their control, their inborn nature, but also something that, if you have an open enough mind, can makes that the best qualities about them. So, and I'll give you, and then just before, and then just real quick before my question on this is, I'll tell you a bit about my experience. So I grew up, I grew up on the autism spectrum. Well, I still am. It never leaves you. So I was very, very slow to develop socially. And the way that it kind of manifested the most is I had no idea what to do with my hair. I had very thick hair, but I also really admired boy bands when I was young. So I was like, how can I get my hair to look like that? So I took, sources from like movies and TV shows like Terminator and stuff where I would spike my hair all the way up, or Twilight, and people called me a werewolf or a wolf kid all the time. Uh, so I can totally get that. But
Did you like being called that or you didn't like it?
no, no,
Oh, you didn't like it.
that
Okay.
was what that was what that was what the that was what the kids who had nothing better to do called me. So,
Oh,
uh,
right.
yeah. Um, and so yeah, it's really left me in this sort of dichotomy about vulnerability. And I think vulnerability and poetry go very, very close together. I think they're almost like a marriage. That's one of the things that internally, you talk a lot about how, me listening, me needing to listen to my own voice more with poetry. And one of the things that really keeps me going is I think poetry is the ultimate manifestation of the universe inside of somebody. I think I think poetry is the peripheral size of a human being, and it can be light years in width. But I'm just babbling
Well,
here.
no, the reason that my sculptures are so big, I have all these I think I have some here. Hold on. Let me
Oh,
just show you. Yeah, here. It's because of what you just said. Hold on. Yeah, so these are about 6 and 9 feet tall. And the reason they're so big is because of what you just said. I believe very strongly that artists have been right for thousands of years about the spirits who speak to us. You talked about the universe being inside, you see? And I love what you just said. The reason these sculptures are so big is because the spirits we write with are bigger than we are.
yeah. Wow. And I think much bigger so too. Yeah. I mean like exponentially. So,
This is one that's in Hamburg, Germany right now that's 11 feet tall. And the thing is, I just really love them being bigger than me because they are. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah. Andy Warhol says, the meaning of life is not to live forever, but to create something that does. So, and obviously, things like sculptures and poetry and, creative oeuvres in general, they not only are much larger than us, or at the very least can be, they will certainly outlive us by, who knows, hundreds, thousands of years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If we don't blow everything up, yeah.
Yeah, which, that's a whole other can of worms. So,
This is in Greece on the island of Anafi.
that's
This
beautiful.
is in Milwaukee at the Woodland Pattern Book Center. And have you ever been there?
No, no, I
Oh,
haven't.
this place is it might be the world's largest poetry only bookstore.
Poetry only bookstore.
Oh, I just love it. I just love it.
I never knew such a thing existed, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, there's a few of them.
And I know of public poetry services before I've learned of poetry only bookstores. Yeah, can I see the first one you showed me of the two, the 9 foot and 6 one? Where's that one at?
These are in The Hague
The Hague.
in Holland. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hmm. So
Actually, let me just try to show you something. I'm sorry, let me just do
no.
this. I think you'll like this version of it better. Where am I? Okay, here. Share. So this is on my website, CAConrad.com. But okay, so this is These are those two poems.
Wow, it's amazing.
And that's another one.
Beautiful.
But yeah, this is actually the latest one in Germany. This is up in Germany right now. It's a very different kind of it's an abandoned men's room in Germany turned into an art gallery. Look, they've got FedEx in Germany too.
They just metastasize everywhere, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, that's interesting. So what medium is that when you put them on a wall?
Those are stenciled on there.
Okay. It's weird. I've never seen an exhibit that looks so intentional yet unintentional at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I can't tell whether that graffiti is part of the exhibit or not.
that's
Especially
good.
you
That's
telling me that
good.
it's abandoned.
Can I share with you the go back to where was I at? Oh, here. Do you mind if I go back to the beginning of this? Here.
Go ahead.
So, do you mind if I just tell you about this? I don't know if you're familiar with this book of mine.
Yeah,
So,
not too much of the contents, but I've definitely, read about it upon researching.
so this is when I'm just before this is when I do the before this book, I do the ritual to deal with my depression for my boyfriend Earth's murder and rape. And then after I'm finished with that, I'm continuing to go in this other direction. And I was thinking about this negative 73 is from the World Wildlife Association. From 1970 to 2025, 73% of all the wild creatures on the planet have vanished. So what I was doing was taking their recordings and lying on the ground on this blanket and then flooding my body with their sounds. And that's how I would write these poems. Do you want me to read? Do you mind if I read one of the poems?
Absolutely, I would love that.
Okay. Golden in the morning crane our necks. In a past life, I was a little fish who cleaned the shells of turtles. A dream helped me remember their deep voice of thanks. Many nights I heard sharks waiting for the tide to draw me near. When the calendar runs out, it feels lucky another awaits. All I have ever wanted was to forge the English language into a spear and drive it into my heart between leaping and being shoved. No lonelier place to put my faith for the swinging motion inside the dance we share. Don the extraordinary suit for this ordinary day. Take our time studying trees to imagine the nests we would build if we were birds. I ask all you talented people spending many creative hours perfecting killer drones, guns, and bombs to please know we are waiting for you on the other side of art in the no kill zone.
It's amazing. So, only thing, what do you mean by absorbing your body with their sounds? Like, are those speakers on the floor or?
I had speakers that I traveled with, and I would lie on that blanket across America. I'll just put it back up again. And and I would put the speakers. So the thing is, we privilege our ears, right? But we're mostly made of water, and nothing on this planet absorbs sound like water. So if, your whole body hears music or sounds. So I put the speakers by my feet first and then would slowly move them up my body till they were up here, up on that blanket that you see there.
Okay.
And that's a quote from a manifesto I wrote.
Let's return this world to its seismic levels of wildness. Mhm. Yeah, it's funny that you say, I mean, I'm just being a nerd here, but it's funny because, you brought up that statistic, losing 73% of the wildlife that we did have in the 1970s. That's roughly the same percentage of how much of our body is water, about 73, 78%.
I know. Well,
Just,
here's the thing. Back in the 1970s, there were just a little over 2 billion people. Now there are 8.
yes.
So that the other animals' numbers are declining rapidly and we're going up.
Yeah. And yet you have, I don't want to turn this political, but then you have a lot of
Why
powerful
not?
people. And then of course you have brilliant, quote unquote, you have powerful people who are saying that population collapse is going to be the greatest threat. It just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no. Oh, you mean like, yeah, Elon Musk was in almost in
Yes.
tears talking about this.
Yes.
And I thought, what the hell is that man talking about? You know what he's talking about?
Um,
He's
yes,
talking about white people.
yes. Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
some kind of crazy racist, at least racialized, but it seems racist to me, this idea that like, oh, human population is dropping. We need to like, what are you talking about? The numbers are going this way, and you're saying the numbers, what are you talking about? And he's basically talking about European
Yes.
people.
Yes.
But there's plenty of people. There's plenty of human beings. What is he talking about?
Yeah.
There, what we need is, safe spaces for these animals that have been here for thousands of years that are no longer able to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's actually a pastime of mine is doing a lot of whale conservation. I feel like this world would be I did do an article interview with someone who spent a lot of time photographing blue whales in Sri Lanka. Um
Wow.
yeah, it was and I feel like the world would be such a really depressing place without animals like that. So
Do you mind if I show you the next thing then? Because I don't want to end on here. This is okay. So here's this depressing, right? Anyway, I get done doing that, and then I go to this book. So this is my most recent book. And in this book, okay, so I lived on the road for over 10 years. And then COVID took me off the road. And I lived for 2 years during COVID in Seattle. Are you familiar with the crows in Seattle? That is one of the world's largest populations of crows. This photograph is in the book. I would feed the crows, and this crow started to let me stroke their beak. Can you see my cursor?
yes.
Like one day they just closed their eyes and leaned forward and allowed me to stroke their beak. Then they started bringing me gifts.
Oh,
These are the gifts the crow brought me.
heh, it's beautiful.
Then I was working with the creatures in the Mojave Desert. There's the kangaroo rat, the pigeons and rats in Rome, Italy. Yeah, and then I have these other little. So these poems are working with animals thriving, like rats, pigeons, coyotes, crows. Do you mind if I read just I'll read one of these. How's that?
Let's go.
Our first lightning strike was convulsive. We felt sad for our violence after exterminating wolves and bison. We do not need a doctor to say dance, dance, dance before the song runs out. Learn how to live so wilderness never becomes mythology. We put them in parks to be wild on purpose. A museum of fur, fangs, and hooves.
Hmm.
Yeah, so, and then this is the one that I just finished. working with sunrise and watching sunrise on outdoor public webcams.
Yeah.
So this book will be out this time next year, and it's called First Light. So I would watch the sunrise wherever I'm at. This is in Tucson, and if you can see that saguaro cactus there. Um, it's funny, it looks like there's a giant dildo down there in the middle in this corner. Uh, but the sun is always rising. You know, it never stops rising. So I would watch the sunrise and then watch the sunrise later in the day on a webcam. This is the Tokyo rail yards. And these poems are, this is what they look like. Let me read just a couple. I'll read this one.
Go ahead.
Fruit fly born in hotel room, died in hotel room. You think I asked for this dream, spanning an entire known world? I might dance around you if I get a pair of bunny pants. No one can afford to lose love. I've explored the alternative. It is a wasteland. You need a temperature of 1800 to turn a heart to ash. Fire needs no fork at the feast. Mourners are a collective memory, understood by my ninth funeral of friends who died of AIDS. I like to see you try telling the heart it has to leave. We get new feet when we reincarnate. I'm always so excited to see them, aren't you? That's the one that I showed you is in that stenciled on the wall in that bathroom in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if the forest called off the hunt? What if you could hear bacteria thinking inside you? What if there was a snooze button on every surface? What if you lean your angry face into the cradle and the baby says, "What the fuck is wrong with you? I'm a baby."
Just
Yeah,
amazing.
so there we go. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for performing your poetry. That's awesome. Yeah. I love how you understand what, one of the foundational aspects of poetry, it's, reading it is one thing, performing it is a whole other different universe. So I'm so happy to hear that, to hear you doing that.
Let me
Um,
show you this last poem because I really want to make this clear because we've been talking about introspection and all this, these things. Um, I do not believe that drugs should ever be used for writing or being creative. Drugs and alcohol are destructive. And I think I've watched too many people destroy themselves. This is a poem right here about a friend on heroin who tried to get me to do heroin to write poem. He says, if you ask me if I believe in forgiveness, I will ask you if you believe in minding your own business. My friend does heroin as a protest against gravity. I don't know if that's why, but I like to give him a reason for floating out of the room. He says it will be good for my poems. I said, babe, you haven't written a poem in years. He started to cry. I said, it's good to cry.
Thank you so much.
Telling me, I mean, come on. You know what I mean? When I was a teenager in Philadelphia, 16, back in like when I was like 16 years old, back in the early 80s, these old men poets would say, wine loosens the tongue.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
No.
I just so
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I'm a lifelong teetotaler, and I think it's I see it as one of my greatest accomplishments. And for the same reason you have, I've seen it ruin too many people's
It
lives.
ruins people.
Yeah,
But no,
that's Mhm.
I've been writing poetry for 50 years. I have seen so many poets die of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
Not just ruin their poetry, but die because of it, you know?
Yeah, and the only thing, the biggest thing I could possibly offer, I'm not one of, proselytizing people to go in a specific direction of, teetotalism or
Oh,
not.
I am. Oh, I am. Oh,
Yeah.
I am. I'll do it. If you don't do it, I'll do it.
Mhm.
Anybody watching our podcast, stay away. Drugs and alcohol are going to fuck you up. They're going to ruin your life. Guarantee that they will. If you're going to use those to be creative, you are in for trouble.
Mhm. Yeah. And the only thing, and the last thing I have to offer, which I think is convincing, because think about it, if you're, when you're, and I think alcohol is a particular problem for me because I do have a family history of alcoholism,
Me
and
too.
yeah, and B, it's there's this joke about it, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the only harmful drug in the world that you have to explain to people why you don't do it. So,
Oh, the alcohol? Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the only drug that you have to explain to people why you don't do it because it's so encouraged by everybody.
This
Um,
is true. This is
yeah, but
true.
what keeps me off of it is one of the biggest revelations is if you stay away from alcohol, you'll be the best person you can possibly be, regardless of who you are. Even if you don't feel you're in a great spot in life, you're still a million miles ahead of if you started drinking. So,
John, was raised by alcoholics. I'm 75% Irish. My Irish side of the family, they're alcoholics, they're drug addicts, they're violent people. I find alcoholics to be some of the meanest people on the planet, and I don't, I don't want it in my life. You
mhm,
know,
I don't either.
I
Mhm.
don't want to be friends with alcoholics anymore. I'm tired of it. It's just no.
Yeah.
They all after 8 p.m. they all become monsters, in my opinion. It seems I don't want to be around it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm old now. I'm old now, and I just want to die around people that I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't want to die soon, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, I don't want to be around any of that anymore.
Mhm.
And it's hard because so many people I know are big drinkers, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I just said that it's the only drug that ruins lives, but yet you tend to have to explain to people that you don't do it. And people it's the only drug that you say, "Oh, I don't do that," and people will think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, they think that, and there's something, they're nosy about it.
Yeah. 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 And then of course, and this has happened to me too, and I'm sure you'll find this funny. When I've had to explain to people that I don't drink, they think I'm some hardcore agrarian fundamentalist.
Oh.
which is very, very far from the truth. But yeah, but people even mistake you for the wrong stereotype. So, you know, so all right, so yeah, back to back to you know, and I guess our last question about childhood and starting to write poetry. Um, I know this is a very generic question, but I feel you have a lot to offer on this one. So when it comes to adversity, I've shared my adversity, you've shared yours. Um, do you believe poetry is more of a tool that helps you cope with the traumatic aspects of early life and life in general, or as a tool to escape it, or is it something else?
Well, I want to make it clear that I think poetry is for everybody, no matter what you've been through, because creativity is really important.
Mhm.
I want to encourage everybody alive who sees this to be creative, to really commit to being, to commit to this thing that's inside of them. You know what I mean? It's not like saying, "Oh, I'm going to be creative." You are creative. You know what I mean? Everybody is already creative. But so this whole question about does trauma make you a better artist or not? I'm not going to agree with that. Here, let me put it this way. I mean, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I put it this way. Okay, here, I'll say this. I've had a lot of fights with, so I'm trans and queer, but I have a lot of there's like all these gay male artists that I've known over the years. when there's nobody else around but other gay men or queers, they'll say things like this. Well, we all know that gay men are the most creative group of people on the planet. I'm like, no, that's a lie. Every single human being is creative. The reason that you get to be creative is because that you're gay and you come from a place where it was you weren't allowed to be gay. So you got to have this sort of private world. You know what I mean? Because you were separate, because you were thrown out of the acceptable world. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't mean that the other people are not creative. It just means that you're lucky in the fact that you got to like seize upon it and grow with it. You know what I mean? My poems are just 50 years of dedication, that's all. Everybody and anybody can be a poet or a painter or a sculptor or a dancer,
Mhm.
and I just really want to encourage everybody. But I see what you're saying. For instance, like what you just said, Jon, like I use that ritual to overcome depression, and it really helped me.
Mhm.
I feel like, okay, here's how I look at it. There's a lot to get through the day, to survive. You gotta like shower so you don't smell bad, so people don't hate you. You obey traffic signals, all this shit. Now, suppose something terrible happens, you know, something terrible happens to you or somebody you love, you're in the emergency room because somebody's been in a car accident, something like that. Or a lover of many years has just left you. All those things you think of to get through the day, all these concerns, they vanish. And you're focused on this one subject. I've heard so many people say to me over the years, when I'm depressed, I do my best work. Yes, but why? I think the reason why is because you're not thinking about all these other things. You're thinking about this one thing you're depressed about. So the depression isn't giving you creativity, it's giving you space. And once we realize it's not the depression, then we can just forget about that romantic ideal of our lives and we can create a situation. You know what I mean? We get to create situations, we get to create rituals around subjects that we're interested in for focus.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not the depression, it's not the hard times. So the hard times just give us space, you know what I mean, to think about it. I just don't want everybody out there who has not had traumatic things happen to them think that they are not creative because every single living human being is creative. Who knows,
Mhm.
maybe even the dead ones who are ghosts, I believe in ghosts.
Yeah. It's mostly yeah, it's not so much that I believe in the tortured artist, fantasy stereotype. It's more so that sort of there's this thing that Nietzsche said that I think about a lot. We have art so that we don't die from reality. I've
I
always
love that.
I've always seen poetry as a serious coping mechanism. We have it. I mean, and you talked about that too. I mean, you talked about, the
Yeah,
harsh reality of working in a factory your whole life.
right.
You literally have to pretend you're not doing what you're doing for 10 hours a day. That's a lot of time of hating what you're doing, but pretending you're not hating it. Which is, I think a tragedy.
Right, right. Well, yes. And our lives are very short. And to think, of spending 10 to 12 hours a day, which is literally half the actual day, you know, it's only 24 hours long a day, in front of a machine
Yeah.
producing dental floss,
Yeah.
and it's horrible. My Aunt Darlene, um, she retired from the dental floss machine after 40 years from the dental floss factory, and she drank herself to death in 6 months.
Sorry to hear
And
that.
when I was 13, it was just, it just ruins people. When I was 13, I asked her, I just was thinking about it, I visited her at the dental floss factory, and the one half of the factory smelled like cinnamon, and then the other half was mint because they had these two kinds of dental floss. And I asked her, I said, Aunt Darlene, do you ever dream about the factory? And she grabbed me and shook me violently and screamed at me and said, don't you ever ask me that again. That
Mhm.
was a very dramatic yes.
Yeah, it's
That meant yes, she did dream about that factory.
yeah, yeah. I that's yeah. I knew a girl who I was friends with this one person who whose family owned a kosher restaurant, kosher neighborhood restaurant, and she worked for like 12 hours. She worked from so her I couldn't believe it. I almost couldn't believe what she told me, but it was true. Her daily routine was 10 to 5, 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. And when she would sleep for 5 hours a night, she dreamed of working at the restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so yeah, and now on to our next topic, which is
okay.
poetry and healing. Um,
I
so
love it.
yes, thank you. Yep, I'm excited. So your work suggests that poetry, and this is why I'm excited by your work, and this is why I'm excited by newer poets rather than the classicists, is they write is poetry that's not just expressive, not just literary, not just literature, but it's energy, it's transformative. Um,
Mhm.
the act of writing can reorganize that can reorganize not only how you look at the world, but can reorganize what you do with your life, after reading the poem and so forth. Um,
I agree, John. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you understand poetry as a mechanism of healing? Excuse me if I get emotional. I knew this was going to be one of my most personal podcasts to date. So, mhm.
Oh, I'm not afraid of emotions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, that question is great. Here's the thing. It's as simple as this. Being creative is how you figure things out. Being creative is how you survive. Are you familiar with the poet Robert Desnos?
I actually did I did the audio for his longest poem, the one about the ship. I did the audio.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Hold on one second.
Yeah, I did the
I'm
audio.
gonna, I need to get a picture up so your audience can see. Here, let me just get this up.
I love, love, love Robert Desnos. He's so ahead of
I'm
his.
so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. Because, John, most people, they're more familiar with, can you see that?
Yep, I know that picture all too well.
So, most people are familiar with Andre Breton from the
Yes.
Surrealists, the early French Surrealist poets. But he was like the bully, Desnos was the real poet of that group. But here's the thing. Desnos doesn't even care about any of that. Um, but the Nazis are about to occupy France, and Desnos joins the French resistance to fight the Nazis. And he's captured and he's sent to Auschwitz as a prisoner.
Yeah.
A-
Yeah.
And when he's a prisoner in Hitler's death camps, he begins writing a new book of poetry because he knows he needs to keep his tools as a poet sharp because he is using these poems. He's studying the guards. He's like, what are these guards doing to protect themselves from what they're doing to us? He's learning German and he's learning the names of all of his fellow inmates and their histories, their stories. And one day, because Desnos is looking at these guards, he's like, what are they doing? How are they doing this to us? They're human beings. How are they able to do this and not kill themselves? So he's looking at how they're protecting themselves. And then one day the guards arrive with a flatbed truck and they load Desnos and his fellow inmates onto that truck. And they're on their way to the gas chamber. And Robert Desnos gets off that truck first because he's a palm reader. He reads palms, the lifeline, the love line, and all that. And he starts reading his fellow inmates' palms in German for the guards. And he's using their names, which is illegal. You could get shot for using somebody's name. They've got these tattooed numbers because the Germans wanted to dehumanize all the prisoners, especially the Jewish ones. And he's knowing about these people, and he starts telling these, and he's reading the lifeline, and he's got these stories. Everybody's supposed to be dead in 10 minutes in the gas chamber, right? But he's giving these stories about their future they're not supposed to have in German. And the guards are confused. Then they're angry, but he won't stop. He just keeps doing it. And he uses their names. And eventually the guards become zombies. He's successful. He breaks through the shell of the guards to make the guards become human beings immediately, he's like, do you see what you're doing to us, And the guards become zombies and they can't kill anybody. And they put them back on the truck and send them back to the barracks.
Mhm.
And then 3 weeks later, the Allied forces, it's an American troop that liberates the camp. And all those people are still alive. So for over 80 years, we've heard the story from the survivors about this poet from Paris who saved all these lives in Hitler's death camps without a single bullet fired. That's an amazing story. That to me is the true testament, the true power of what creativity can do. Creativity is for surviving.
I actually did not know about that particular story.
It's
I
one of my favorite stories about why creativity needs to be harnessed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I knew about the basics. I knew he was part of the French Resistance and ultimately was killed in concentration camp. But yeah, I
No,
know
he
that's
didn't. No, he didn't. He wasn't killed.
he wasn't.
No, that's the story I just told. Everybody
Oh,
survived.
I
He
thought
saved everybody's life.
I thought he did die young.
He died a month afterwards of typhoid, but he was not killed.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. He rescued all these people and himself with his all of his creative efforts, you know what I mean? And I'm very sad about that manuscript. He handed it to, he's writing this book of poems. He's writing the book of poems as a way of being able to study the guards to figure out how to save everybody, right?
Hmm.
He hands that manuscript to an American soldier who then throws it away. Can you believe that? It was thrown in the garbage. The US State Department has one sentence and it says that the poet Robert Desnos's manuscript was accidentally destroyed by an American soldier. What do you mean accidentally destroyed? I don't believe that. But if you go to Paris, the apartment he lived in Paris, where the Nazis kidnapped him, outside of, because I was just in Paris recently because the book of French was just translated into French. Outside of that apartment, there is a plaque explaining this is where Robert Desnos lived. And then there's a vase in the wall, and somebody puts fresh flowers in that vase every single week for 80 years to honor him rescuing all these people in the Hitler's death camps.
That's almost I think that's almost better than I think that's better than a Walk of Fame or any institutional honor.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like the Poe toaster, people by themselves come up when they have honor in mind, they come up with better ways to honor people than institutions ever will. So,
I think you're right.
Yeah, better than the MacArthur Fellowship. I don't, yeah. I mean, that's literal poetry, putting fresh flowers on an abandoned vase for 80 years. Yeah.
every year, every week.
Yeah. I
Whenever
do,
you walk by it, there's fresh flowers in it.
and I agree with you too. I think Robert Desnos, I'm only saying that I know because, of how vast, the surrealist movement was, but I think my conclusion from that, he was probably the best poet of the surrealists. A lot of his poetry was from hypnagogia and sleep states, right? Like
Right.
didn't he kind of pioneer writing in a half sleeping state?
Oh, well, he and all the others, they did many, many, many experiments. But yes, they experimented with sleep, all kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah, and it, I can only imagine what it would be like, growing up French and reading his poetry originally, because even it takes, I think that takes a supremely talented, I think it takes a legendary poet who, it's one thing to write great, but to have your work be easy to look great when it's translated, I think takes it to another level because
Yeah.
that's kind of the fatal flaw of classicist. That's the fatal flaw of Dostoevsky. You do kind of almost have to know Russian intuitively to understand like the true
Mwah.
classes. Yeah.
Those names in his, I mean, reading Dostoevsky, those names are so difficult to remember. They're so long. There's so many of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then another brief question is, oh yeah, by the way, I did remember the title of the poem that I did. It was The Night of Loveless Night, the Night of Loveless Nights. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's Robert Desnos.
Yes, yeah, I did the audio for that. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's so nice.
Yeah, it was really fun to do. So now onto the second aspect of healing is, I've noticed a precision in the language that you use and the rituals that is almost is almost psychological in nature, but obviously, and this is what we could probably dive into. Is there any gap or is there any bridge between your approach to poetry and psychological models of, healing in your view? I know that was pretty loaded, but
Oh,
is there any overlap between, because I actually do see your work as very psychological in nature. It's very, because it's process oriented, but not in like the aleatoric way of being literally process based, but it's introspectively, like I said, it's psychologically
right.
process based. It's processing your emotions. So I just want to know if there's any overlap between your approach to poetry and psychology. Has psychology played any impact on your poetry or?
Well, again, I believe that being creative, no matter what discipline that would be, whether it's poetry or painting or music, whatever you do, dance,
Mhm.
it's absolutely going to be good for you, beneficial to you emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's when we suppress the creative. We need to treat the creative, like I said in that poem, like I said, like where do I have that? Let me just show you. Here, it's this one right here.
Peekaboo.
Can you see the cursor?
Yes, I can.
Uh, More important to recognize creativity is a vital organ. Poetry forged in the body, shot into the pitch. In other words, like think about creativity as a vital organ in our body. It's vital as the heart or the kidneys or the liver. You know what I mean? Like to start thinking about it as more than just a process. Like it's part of who we are. You know what I mean?
Hmm. That's and I love that you say that poetry forged creativity, and I'm interpreting that as all of creativity. Like I'm taking in all of the mediums of art, music, theater, dancing, and that is part of my appeal why I am continuing poetry is because and talking to people like you is because I do feel poetry is sort of an umbrella art of almost all the other creative arts. I a quote that has pretty much been the foundation of my work was by the Renaissance artist Leon Battista Alberti, who was he was a mentor of Leonardo, and he said something that I think is super profound. He said the greatest accomplishment of a painter is the history of a painting. Um,
Oh,
and Mark Rothko said, I think Mark Rothko said the same thing when he painted his first ever mural, his 9-10 foot mural. And a journalist asked him how long it took him to paint it, and he said 57 years. And that's what I think. That's what I think what poetry means as an umbrella art. Poetry supersedes art, in my opinion. So, you know, yeah, I think about that a
I
lot.
like that.
That
That's interesting.
the greatest accomplishment of a painter is the history of the painting. Yeah, it's something
I
that.
like that.
And let's see, change. Let's see. Do you view your poetry? Last question on healing.
I am I, old Father Fisheye that begat the ocean, the worm at my own ear, the serpent turning around a tree. I sit in the mind of the oak and hide in the rose. I know if any wake up, none but my death. Come to me, bodies, come to me, prophecies, come all foreboding, come spirits and visions, I receive all. I'll die of cancer, I enter the coffin forever, I close my eye, I disappear, I fall on myself in winter snow, I roll in a great wheel through rain, I watch lovers in convulsion, cars screech, furies groaning their basso music, memory fading in the brain, men imitating dogs. I delight in a woman's belly, youth stretching his breasts and thighs to sex, the cock sprung inward gassing its seed on the lips of yin. The beasts dance in Siam, they sing opera in Moscow. My boys yearn at dusk on stoops. I enter New York, I play my jazz on a Chicago harpsichord. Love that bore me I bear back to my origin with no loss. I float over the vomiter, thrilled with my deathlessness, thrilled with this endlessness I dice and bury. Come, poet, shut up, eat my word, and taste my mouth in your ear.
So we just got back from our break. So we both needed it. So one thing that I think you have a lot to offer on is this conviction of mine that poetry is a very reasonable, it's not overly religious or superstitious, but it's a reasonable antidote to reductionism. It's a way of, as Nietzsche says, not dying from reality, as coping with the potential, the admittedly horrible possibility that there is nothing more to life, that it's just flesh, skin, bone, white bread, whatever. So I want to know what you think poetry or creativity as a whole has, as a general, has to offer against reductionism.
Wow. So yeah, that's a tall order to fill. I I don't know. I feel like creativity is the answer against any problem, really, in many ways, you know. First of all, that story about Robert Desnos and the death camp, it was his creativity that led him to figure out how to rescue everybody. You know what I mean? Like that's where I want to focus on it. You know, this sort of healing idea of poetry being ongoing. You know what I mean? Like, um, I'm sure you've worked on something and set it aside for a month and going back to it, and suddenly all the problems were visible, like you could figure it out. I think the thing that we don't really think about enough is the fact that human beings are learning animals. We learn something every day, you know? And you know, Jung and Freud had all these ideas about what dreams were doing, but some researchers now believe that dreams are actually a little different than the symbolic nature that we've been assigning them. They believe that, you know, dreaming is us incorporating the things that we learned that day into our consciousness. Because we learn so much all day long constantly, after a month of not working on a poem, when you come back to that poem, suddenly you have all this a month of learning. I feel like we just need to honor A, our ability to learn every day, and B, our ability to be creative inside of that learning. Because not, you know, keep in mind, Albert Einstein said, the imagination is more valuable, more important than knowledge. Anybody can read a book and regurgitate it back to you that way. Who cares? What are you going to do with that information?
Yeah, I really practice this too. I don't just believe this, I practice what the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran said. It's better to have little knowledge that you do a lot with than a whole book in your head that you don't do shit with. So, yeah. And I practice that. So,
Yeah.
and then so our next question is all about uh creative processes. A poet that comes to mind in particular, although vastly different from you because I feel like it's more external, is Jackson Mac Low, who really, who really was an inspiration of mine of prioritizing process rather than the
Yeah.
product. So, with
I
his,
love Jackson McLow's poems. He's great.
he's fantastic. Yeah. It's a shame that all of his books are out of print. His books are not cheap. So so
I
yeah,
know.
who he did highly systematic chance-based, compositional methods, diastic reading, stochastic algorithmic structures, blah blah blah. I'm sounding like a total nerd. But with that notion of process can be just as meaningful, if not more meaningful than the product. How should a 21st century poet think about inventing their own process rather than inheriting one from someone else?
Oh yeah, I know this idea of originality. Everybody's a here's the thing. That whole concern, you know, like, are you the prodigal, child of the, blah blah blah, the art world and all that. That's sort of a 20th century art as commodification mindset when there were 2 billion people on the planet, but there are now 8 billion people on the planet. And again, I really want to refocus on everybody being creative. I'm more interested in getting activation. You know what I mean? Getting everybody to trust their creativity, act upon the creativity, and try to incorporate it into their lives. Those three things. Trust it, do these things, make it part of your life.
Mhm.
It will make your life. Look, the poet William Carlos Williams was a full-time doctor. He worked 7 days a week delivering babies and all kinds of things. You can be a poet and do anything,
Mhm.
you know?
Perhaps maybe it could also, especially with everything you've talked about your family, it can be that tool of coping with not dying of the reality of your life, as depressing as that sounds. If you work a job that you hate, you're stuck in a lot of, unfortunately, I know a lot of people stuck in a marriage that they hate. Um,
Well, I encourage divorce,
yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do too.
Life is very short.
Yeah, it is. And so the last question, so we are both busy, so we cannot get to every question. So I will narrow this down to the topic of inspiration. Inspiration is a very, very funny word in my opinion. I looked at it totally differently after a friend of mine explained to me the etymology of the word rather than the definition. He said that inspiration means indwelt, breathed in by the spirit. And I thought inspiration meant like a creative sort of artistic thing, but it had a much more otherworldly, almost spiritual connotation. So, and of course, there's this very long tradition of poets, um, probably stemming from William Blake or what was the name of that mystic? The female mystic, the really polymath one. What was her name?
Alma Klimt or
Oh, Hildegard von
Hildegard von Bingen,
Hildegard von
the
Bingen.
nun. Yeah. Hmm.
So of course there's this centuries long tradition of poets describing inspiration as external or otherworldly. Um, how do you see this? Do you see this as a metaphor or do you see this as a genuine phenomenological experience?
Oh, it's real. It's real. I said it earlier. I believe that the artists have been right for thousands of years about these, they've been called muses, ghosts, spirits, spooks. They're real. I believe inspiration is a lot like intuition. It's right here around you, and they're whispering in our ear. So intuition is a form of listening, you know.
Mhm.
Like lots of people, how many times have you heard yourself say, I wish I listened to my intuition?
Every time we made a horrible mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's because, so it's like, okay, listen to your intuition, trust it, but then do the thing that almost nobody will do, the third thing, which is to actually do what it says.
Tiff. Yeah. They say your gut is your second brain, so. Mhm.
It's gut, but it's also whispering in our ear. I believe there are actual spirits around us
Mhm.
guiding us.
Yeah.
I believe they're true. I believe they're real. And artists have been talking about it for thousands of years. These helpers,
Yeah.
are they our former dead loved ones, or like it's hard to tell. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. And so yeah, and it's a tool, and that's why that's something that I felt that you had a lot to offer on poetry being a tool against reductionism. It's funny because one of the most reductionist scientists I've ever known um, said one of the hardest things that he really wanted to solve but couldn't, said this at the end of his life, is whenever why do human beings, whenever we hear a mysterious sound in the dark, why do we always say who's there? We don't say what's there. We don't try to
Hmm.
come to our own conclusions. We say who's there. You know, does that mean this somebody could want us as well? It's very, I think it's endlessly fascinating stuff. So, and so that was all the questions that we could get to today. As I've said before,
You brought up William Blake, and William Blake has
yeah.
a painting that he did of a ghost that literally drove him out of the house. Um, and it's because I give a talk on occult poetry. And William Blake is one of the people in there. I show the painting that he did that's in the British Museum of this ghost that literally drove him out of the house.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by the transmission that comes to us to write and to be creative.
And I think a more morbid example, I'm not sure how big the spiritual connotation is on this one, but there's the unfortunately the artist's name has fallen out of my head, but the painting, everyone knows the painting, Saturn devouring his son. Um, and of course the painting,
Goya. It's
Goya.
a painting by Goya.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Francisco Goya, yes. And everyone knows how horrifying the painting is, but I think what's even more horrifying is what's not seen in the painting, which is that nobody had seen the painting until Francisco Goya died. It
Mm.
was on the wall in a room, in a private room in his house. It was not meant to be seen by anyone, which I think
Ah,
which I think is even more profound. It goes back to what I said about Alberti, it's the history behind the painting that is usually more profound than the painting. So,
it is.
yeah.
And you were talking about the origins of the word inspiration. In spirit.
Hmm.
In. You know, the Latin Mass, when it was the whole idea of the priest giving the Mass was like in Latin, and it was just this whole irritating thing to separate you from the spirit, really, in a way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because originally this says spiritus, and spiritus, it's like this whole idea of the spirit is in you.
Hmm.
We don't really need an interpreter.
Hmm.
I believe we have it. I do. I really do. I believe that we have it, and I really firmly, strongly believe every human being on this planet is creative.
Hmm. But it's also, but you said it's also transmission, so it could be other spirits to us from someone.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. But are you willing to pick up the pen or whatever it is and do the things that they're telling you to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what we need people to do, to
Hmm.
listen and basically collaborate with these spirits.
Yeah. All right. So that I think we touched on all the fundamental stuff that I wanted to get to. Unfortunately, we did not have time for all the questions, as I've said it way at the beginning, and I'm saying at the end. You are a very accomplished, very
Oh,
busy person, and I thank you so much.
oh,
And I thank you so much, especially not just the cliche showing up, talking. Thank you so much for opening up about I know the very sensitive topics about, your life. I was very worried I was gonna bring up a question inviting that without knowing that. So I appreciate
oh
you.
no.
I
No,
appreciate
I'm nothing but honored that you're interviewing me. You're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Should
very
we
much.
end with me? Should we end with me reading one more poem?
Go ahead. Go. Yeah, read whatever is on your mind.
Uh-oh. Oh well, I don't know. Maybe I no longer have it open. Okay, here it is. Sorry. Um, I don't know what I just shared.
Was that part of your
Okay, here I am. Sorry, John. That just took me way too long to get there. Sorry about that. How about I end with this poem?
let's do it. Floor is yours.
What do you think? This one or that one?
Let's see. Let me do some scanning. All right, let me see the other one. Okay, the one before was better. Yeah. Yes, that one.
Can you show us where it hurts on this map of the world? Feel politicians engineering idioms to fit the ear. Back in the United States, queer friends are buying guns. Soft hems of those I love starting to fray. We begin to realize preparation or prayer are choices. We left when we heard them say, let's chop them in half and see what that does.
That was
Well,
beautiful.
it's been really wonderful getting to hang out with you today and talk with you and hear your ideas. And I love the poems that you shared as well.
The two-headed calf. Yeah, that's a poem that I've seen a lot of people cry to it. It's one of the very few poems that I've seen people who don't usually read poetry love it. So yeah, and this is once again we didn't get to all the questions, so maybe there's a chance we could get together at some point in the future and continue where we left off. And then last thing is we almost could have met in person because I'm in Florida and you were in Pensacola recently, weren't you, for a residence?
I was recently in Pensacola for on a residency to finish that first light book that I was reading from.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All
I
right.
did finish it, which was great. I love Pensacola.
You do?
Yeah, have you ever been there?
I've driven through it. Yeah.
It's only 2 hours from New Orleans. It's like being in New Orleans.
Okay.
It's like all these punk bands like settle there. It's an amazing city, Pensacola.
All right. Yeah. My favorite is St. Petersburg. I like St. Petersburg.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So yeah, and you are heading to Sweden in 5 days, right?
Yeah,
All right. So yeah, and I wish you the very best on your touring and your traveling and your somatics. So yeah. So
thank you so
fundamentally,
much.
thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful day.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
We will talk again. Let's see.